Lin Sanju could feel something pressing uncomfortably against the back of her head. Half a day had already passed. She felt exhausted and did not feel like moving, so she just flipped sideways hazily. At that very moment, she suddenly heard a line from a song, "You are my little, little apple, one." It broke the tranquility of the night and sounded rather irritating. Whose ringtone is so loud? That's too disturbing. I can even hear it from the 38th floor. Lin Sanju suppressed her sleepiness and opened her eyes. She saw a row of orange round circular grab handles. That's right, I am not in that 38th floor penthouse, this is the new world. She sat upright and saw the rows of seats which were filled with cardboard cartons of supplies. On the side of the wall beside her, there was still a green sign stating, "Priority seat for elderly, disabled, pregnant, and injured." The rare starlight from outside the windows illuminated the rim of the sign dimly. At the top of the exit doors, there was a piece of route map of something similar to that. But the only thing she could discern was the numerical 3, contemporary romance. Suddenly, there were a few quick knocks on the door of their public bus. The volume of the "Little Apple" song grew louder and was followed by Voli's voice, "Hey, it's already 10, you should all wake up. Let's go." Lin Sanju rubbed her eyes as memories of the current reality flooded her mind. That's right, this afternoon, they had agreed to bring Voli along their journey. They even went into his car, eating, drinking, and chatting for a long time. Even though Voli looked like a timid guy, they only found out that he was quite an attentive person after interacting with him. To conserve their energy for the night, all of them went to rest quickly. Voli, being the only person with a mobile phone, had volunteered to set an alarm so that they could set off at 10 p.m. Lin Sanju jumped up and walked over the driver's seat. She pressed a button, and the door of the public bus opened, showing Voli, who was still clad in that oversized western suit. Lin Sanju eyed him a little moodily. "You should switch that alarm off quickly. What will we do if it attracts the duolujongs here? And the volume of that thing is way too loud." Voli responded with an, oh, and quickly switched his phone off. Once that "Little Apple" song faded, Lin Sanju felt that the world became much more peaceful. Voli smiled and asked, "Where is Miss Marcy? What about Xiao Lu, are they awake?" "They're at the back," Lin Sanju replied. Meanwhile, Marcy yawned and walked over. She rinsed her mouth with mineral water and sat down in the driver's seat sleepily. Luther nodded his head at Voli, acknowledging his presence, and rubbed his eyes as he headed back to the truck. From the back, he also looked listless. Everyone looks so tired, Lin Sanju thought as she could not help yawning again. On the contrary, Voli seemed to be in high spirits. He went back and forth checking all the engines. Once he saw that there were no problems, he waved his arms enthusiastically. "That's great. We set off now." After she washed up and sat in the truck for a while, her drowsiness slowly abated. She was finally fully awake. She looked at the map in her hand, searching for the road towards the industrial park in Shijiao, and was the first one to start up her vehicle. Shijiao was one of the famous industrial parks in the city. There were all sorts of factories and processing plants there. The factories there usually had their own dormitories and canteens. Basically, they were pretty much small self-contained ecospheres. Once they reached there, finding backup electrical generators, supplies and shelter shouldn't be a problem. The other vehicles followed her lead and slowly started their engines. She had to admit that allowing Voli to join them was right. He not only knew how to maintain cars, but the most surprising thing was that he had a few sets of walkie-talkies in his car. Even though the walkie-talkies could only work within a short distance, but at least they could communicate with each other while driving their own respective vehicles now. Luther's jovial voice came through the walkie-talkie on the seat beside her. "Xiaoju, how far are we from the industrial park?" "It depends. If we don't meet any traffic obstructions, this shortest route should only take an hour. After we go over this hill, we will be able to see a traffic sign soon." Just as she said this, her stomach suddenly made a weird grumble. "That's bad," she silently thought to herself. Sure enough, Luther heard that sound. "Haha. What's that sound? Do we have to stop for a while so that you can relieve yourself?" There was a sound of a laughter escaping from someone, obviously Marcy. "I am just a little hungry," Lin Sanju scolded jokingly. "I'm sure a brat like you doesn't have a girlfriend." While she said this, she searched for a packet of cookies irritably, opened up the packaging and ate a piece, as the others laughed over the walkie-talkies. They were actually quite lucky, since most of the cars, on the road they were on, parked lawfully at the side of the road. Even when they occasionally met some abandoned cars blocking the road, they managed to squeeze through. Due to the serious desertification, the boundaries between the road and the sidewalk was no longer so clearly defined. As a result, even after they had been driving for over 10 minutes, the group of vehicles was still heading toward the industrial park via the shortcut. I heard a pop sound just now. Did any of you heard that? Marcy suddenly asked while driving. Voley immediately responded worriedly, Miss Marcy, let's hope that it is not a problem with your engines. Where did that sound come from? It is too muffled, so I am not sure. But there is no sound now. If you hear it again, I will help you check the engines again. After hearing that, Lin Sanju could not help looking at her rear mirror. Behind the second truck, she could see the public bus. It was moving normally, and she could even see Marcy's vague outline sitting in the driver's seat. Nothing looked out of place. Not thinking anything more about that, she casually winded down her window. A gust of hot night wind rushed in, and her hair instantly flowed behind her. The subsequent turn of events played out like a movie. It happened so clearly yet so unrealistically. Almost suddenly, she heard a loud cry over the walkie-talkie. That was Luther's voice, but she could not make out what he was saying. Lin Sanjo's heart trembled, and just as she was about to ask, "How are you?" she heard a sharp screeching break. Thereafter, a loud boom of collision rang out in the air. Lin Sanjo's heart skipped a beat. She stuck her head out of the window braving the strong winds and turned to look behind. Her heart almost stopped. In the scene she saw through her flowing black hair, the front portion of Luther's truck was now sideways, and the truck was stopped horizontally across the middle of the road. As there was no time to react, the bus that was behind it collided with it violently. Plumes of thick smoke rose immediately. Luther's body flew out of the driver's seat. As countless broken glass sprayed outwards, his body was stuck in midair as if time froze. A long mouthpart was protruding out from his stomach, and the thing behind the mouthpart was hiding within the truck. All these happened so quickly that she didn't even have the time to blink. Lin Sanjo's eyes turned red. She yelled and stopped her truck. Once she got out of her truck, she raced toward Luther. But before she could reach him, the bus suddenly exploded with a boom. Along with the smoke and flames from the accident, glass flew out everywhere. The glass rain instantaneously scratched Lin Sanjo's exposed skin, covering her with bleeding cuts all over. She was pushed to the ground by the shockwave of the explosion, and her whole body was covered with wounds. However, Lin Sanju sat in a daze on the ground, as if she did not felt a thing. This was because she could see very clearly. As the glass fragments fell, she also saw pieces of blood-covered flesh falling in that familiar red hair. You've got to be kidding, right? The Citro, and that was at the back of the line, nearly hit the bus. Voley was so shocked that his face was a ghastly white when he opened his car doors. He shouted, How did this happen?" After she sat startled for a long time, she finally stood up. Without a word, she ran toward the truck with her red rage-filled eyes. Voley, who was panting heavily, quickly pulled her aside and yelled, "You have to calm down." Before he finished his sentence, a dark shadow loomed over him. He lifted his head and was shocked. Probably because Lin Sanju did not secure the brakes on the truck when she stopped her vehicle so suddenly, it had rolled backward toward them. Voley wanted to let go of Lin Sanju and escape, but the truck was too close. He had only lifted his feet when the large steel body of the truck swallowed the both of them. First round. It was a complete wipeout. Translator note. 1. This is a real viral Chinese song called Little Apple, Xiaoping. In the dark, Lin Sanju could feel something pressing uncomfortably against the back of her head. Half a day had already passed. She felt exhausted and did not feel like moving, so she just flipped sideways hazily. The next second, she woke up abruptly from her dream, panting heavily. Lin Sanju lowered her head and saw her trembling hands. Dead? Am I dead? Is everyone dead? She turned her head looking vacantly. She found Marcy and Luther sleeping alongside each other quite close to her. Both of them were frowning as if they were in a sort of nightmare. Even though they were still asleep, she could see the movement of their chests. That was enough proof that they were still alive and well. So, was that just a dream? Lin Sanju stood up from the floor. Her hands and feet still felt cold, and her whole body was weak. The moment that she died, the moment all the bones and organs in her body were crushed, the moment when she slipped into a boundless darkness, that almost unbelievable pain, was that all a dream? She shivered. She opened the door and stepped out of the bus. She desperately needed some fresh air so that she could clear her mind. Just as she stepped outside, a deafening, "You are my little apple," rang out loudly, tearing the tranquility of the night. Lin Sanju paused for a moment. She heard it again, just like the previous time, or more rightly, in her dream. The noisy ringtone did not last as long as in her dream. Instead, someone stopped it quickly before even 2 lines of the song. The darkness returned to a dead silence. Lin Sanju gazed quietly at the direction of the citro. Motionlessly. Even after a while, Voli did not come out to wake them. She felt a little impatient and decided to take a look, but suddenly she heard a soft cry of shock from the bus, following which, Marcy called out, "Luther." Xiao Ju. Lin Sanju immediately rushed into the bus. At the same time, Luther woke up gasping and sitting upright. The 3 of them exchanged glances, finding that each of their faces was pale. "I dreamed that I died," the 3 of them suddenly said together when they matched glances. "Huh, how could that be?" Luther was the first to react. "Both of you also dreamed of your own death." "Not only me," Lin Sanju's face darkened, "I dreamed that the 4 of us all died." "Why don't you tell me about your dream first?" Following the order of their deaths, Luther was the first one to speak. "My dream just now was simply too realistic. I dreamed that we were on the way to an industrial park. Suddenly, a duolujang jumped onto the top of my vehicle. It smashed the windows on the other side and all of a sudden, my stomach," his face turned pale, and he looked like he could not continue. "Huh, how can that be? In my dream, you were attacked by a duolujang, so you turned your truck, and I collided with you." Marcy was shocked as her light brown eyes widened, staring at Luther. "I was badly injured and was trying to climb out of the driver's seat when there was a sudden explosion, and you died as well," Lin Sanju interjected with cold sweat all over her body. "How did you know?" "That's because I was around when it happened." Lin Sanju shut her eyes, returning to that scene. "When both of you died, my truck rolled backward and crushed Voli and myself. It was as if heaven played a prank on us. We were all killed just like that. How is this possible? Our dreams were all connected." Luther mumbled to himself. Marcy and Lin Sanju furrowed their brows. They were momentarily speechless. While the atmosphere between them froze over, they heard Voli's voice outside the bus, "Is everyone awake?" She was not sure if she heard wrongly, but his voice seemed to tremble a little. Did he have the same dream? Almost as if to verify their thoughts, Voli poked his head in and said, "I want to tell you something, but don't scold me. I just had a dream where every one of us died. I am not trying to jinx us, but we have to be careful today. That dream was just too realistic." "Hey, what's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Lin Sanju could feel a head-splitting headache. She beckoned for Voli. "We had the same dream. Come in, let's make sense of the matter." Voli agreed and quickly climbed up the bus. The 4 of them sat in a circle. Everything was pretty straightforward. For some unknown reason, the 4 of them shared the same dream. The surprising thing was, despite them dying in their dreams at different times, each of the details in their dreams matched up perfectly. The pop sound that Marcy heard was probably the sound that the duolujang which killed Luther made. The duolujang must have had run across the bus and landed on the top of the truck. Then, it attacked Luther. Even the event where Lin Sanju was hungry midway and ate a cookie are the jokes that Voli told Luther. Their recollections corroborated with each other's. Hearing the other 3 of them discussing intensely, Lin Sanju raised her head frustratingly, feeling perplexed. She took a deep breath and paused for a moment. "Wait, what's the matter?" The 3 of them looked at her in confusion. "Did you get a sudden insight?" Unexpectedly, Lin Sanju asked a totally random question. "Marcy, what is the bus route that public bus takes?" Marcy thought for a while. "If it isn't 89, it's 90. I can't really remember, but it is those 2 numbers. Look." Lin Sanju pointed at the route map which was above the exit doors. The various stops on the route could not be seen, but there was only a bright red, 2. Was I wrong? Is this bus number 2? Marcy looked at Lin Sanju, puzzled. "But Xiao Ju, is this very important?" Lin Sanju stared at the numerical 2 for a very long time. Suddenly, she jumped up and swore. "What the FCK? What's the matter?" The rest of them asked in succession. "I was thinking that this looked really familiar. I remembered." Lin Sanju could feel the hair on her neck stand as she continued. "In my dream, I saw this. The only difference was that in my dream, that was a 3 and not a 2. She glanced at the 3 of them, and her tone turned even more serious. "I have lived in this city for many years, and I've never seen this sort of thing. All the public bus should just have a bus route. That is to say, this number only appeared afterward. Almost as if she remembered something, Marcy exclaimed, "Ah," and covered her mouth. Lin Sanjo's tone was heavy as if it weighed a ton. "You still don't understand. This means that we are either dreaming right now or the fact that we died was not a dream." Luther unconsciously pinched his own arm and responded, "I am 100% sure that I am not dreaming. That's weird. If we really did die for one round, why are we still all right now?" Lin Sanju wanted to speak, but her attention was drawn to Voli's quiet voice. "Those numbers, the previous time was a 3, now it is a 2, is that a countdown? Does that mean that we have 2 more chances?" Contemporary romance. From when the time the 4 of them had decided to form a group, this was the first time that Lin Sanju saw this side of Voli. His head was lowered so she could not see his expression clearly. But somehow, there was a weird indescribable aura about him. She took a deep breath and said, "I have the same sentiments." The atmosphere became tense again as everyone fell silent. "Is there a time limit to this thing?" Luther held his arm, being the first to break the silence. "If there is one, we can just wait here safely until it is over before we continue our journey." Quote, Marcy sighed, "I'm afraid it isn't that simple." Sticking to the main topic, what exactly is this? Why is such a thing happening? Before Marcy finished lamenting, Voli suddenly interrupted her and spoke in an exceptionally resolute tone. "I feel that we definitely can't just sit here. How would we know if there is really a time limit to this? If we continue waiting, will something else happen? These are all unknown variables. But if we follow our previous path, we already know what the dangers are, so from my perspective, we should set off as before but just be more careful." Lin Sanju couldn't help looking at Voli again. No matter how many duolujongs they would kill, or how many times they escaped death during a dangerous situation, one thing was certainly clear: everyone that is alive is not dead. Yet, Lin Sanju did experience death once, just now. It was true as can be. It was a death where she lost both her body and consciousness. The shock of death could not be compared to anything she had experienced. Death was a gray cloud which loomed over every human ever since their birth. It was the unavoidable ultimate fear of the end that no sage could escape. Lin Sanju still shivered when she recalled the moment of her death. On the other hand, Voli could still calmly analyze the situation. She couldn't help praising him. "Voli, I really couldn't tell that you were a person that could still remain so collected after what we've been through." After he heard her praise, he instantly regained his usual demeanor and gave an unctuous smile. "Hey, I am just an unimportant person, I just have this life. I am happy just to survive, why would I even dare to be weak?" Lin Sanju did not say a word and withdrew her admiration. Voli's words had convinced all of them. They discussed a while more and quickly came to a conclusion. This time, they would follow what Voli said and be more alert. Since they were prepared this time, all of them should come out of this unharmed, right? "Firstly, we must have a grasp on that duolujong's movement," Lin Sanju said with a serious face as she looked at her companions. "It all started out when Marcy heard a pop sound, right? Where did it come from?" At this point, their group of 4 vehicles was parked at the side of the road, in the same succession as before. The 4 of them stood atop the bus, frowning intensely. Marcy closed her eyes to recall the details. "I was driving and I heard a sound, but I couldn't tell where it was from. I only knew that it sounded muffled. I think the source was some distance away from my driver's seat. That would mean that it was from the mid-back segment of the bus." Lin Sanju strolled over to the mid-back of the bus and suddenly exerted her strength and leapt upward from that spot. With her enhanced body, her ability to jump had reached a level that shouldn't be underestimated. She managed to jump to the height of an adult human. Thereafter, she landed heavily on the metal roof of the bus, but it only made a dull thump. "It is not possible to hear a sound at this volume if you were driving," Lin Sanju concluded. "A duolujong is at least half my weight, right?" With this line of reasoning, the fellow must have jumped down from a very high location. From a very high location, the few of them frowned as they recalled their previous journey, trying to remember if they had seen any tall buildings. Suddenly, Marcy asked, "Since the duolujong had already landed on my vehicle, why didn't it kill me? Instead, it abandoned the nearest target and decided to kill Luther. I mean, the bus has a large windshield, it would be easy for me to spot it. It probably planned to create a pileup." Voli looked to his left and right. If the second vehicle meets with a mishap, the subsequent 2 vehicles would be in trouble. "My car collided with the back of your vehicle, but I was all right." If it wanted to create a pileup, wouldn't it be faster if he targeted Xiaoju? Luther retorted with a question. Voli took a deep breath. He thought about it a while longer before giving up. Who knows, maybe that Duoluzhong is crazy so it just randomly chose you. Will it choose me again this time round? Or will it choose someone else randomly? Luther felt more and more frustrated as they discussed about it. DMN. This countdown provides too little information. There is no way we can infer about anything. Don't overthink matters. Lin Sanju walked over and patted his shoulder in a consoling manner. I think it shouldn't be too hard to avoid this accident, at least we are certain about the location where it happened. We can stop before we reach the slope. We can survey the area, patrol it. Any Duoluzhong we spot, we'll kill. I don't believe we can't overcome this. Her resolute and decisive tone immediately raised the confidence of the people in her party. After all, it was just a single Duoluzhong. That's right, this time round, we will make a preemptive strike. Voli agreed with a smile. After they had made their preliminary plans, they continued with the journey as the scorching night continued. To avoid any other complications, their vehicles were in the same formation. The only difference now is that they had learned a lesson from their previous experience. The windows in their vehicles have been winded down, and each of them now had a weapon beside them which they could readily grab. They drove slowly throughout their journey, and no one spoke a word. Everyone was fully alert and listened carefully to their surroundings. They did not want to miss even a small hint of unusual activity. Feeling her parched throat, Lin Sanju swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Just then, Marcy whispered over the walkie-talkie, "It's here. Stop your vehicles." Lin Sanju shouted into her walkie-talkie. She pressed down on her brake, switched off the ignition, and jumped out of her truck holding her police baton. The slope where the four of them met that untimely end was just in front of them. The four vehicles were now parked at the bottom of the slope. At the same time, Luther, Marcy, and Voli rushed out of their vehicles. They surrounded the bus with weapons in their hands, and all of them looked up at the roof of the bus at the same time. There were no street lights in that night deprived of human civilization. However, with the headlights from the Citro, and in their evolved night vision, the few of them could see clearly. On the top of the bus, there was a crouching figure of a dark shadow. Seeing that long, constantly moving mouthpart, what else could it be other than a Duoluzhong? Discovering that it was surrounded, the Duoluzhong immediately stood up. It turned and ran toward the back of the bus. Lin Sanju widened her eyes and inhaled. The Duoluzhong did not show any sign of shrinkage, its body was no different from a normal human. For it to reach such a state, how many victims did it have to fully drain? Even its speed was the same as a normal person. If it wasn't for the long mouthpart, Lin Sanju would have thought that it was a normal person. Trying to escape after you've killed me? Dream on. Luther was the first person to react. He gritted his teeth, and once his feet pushed away from the ground, he lunged forward like an arrow. In a blink of an eye, he was already some distance away. Lin Sanju and Marcy followed suit quickly. The only person without much fighting capabilities, Voli, ran a few steps after them before stopping to pant. He yelled out toward their back, "I will just keep a lookout here. All of you, you can do it." The Duoluzhong's speed was almost on par with a normal person, but were the people chasing it even considered normal? Within half a minute, the three of them had already blocked its path and surrounding it. The Duoluzhong stared at the three of them without moving. The three of them stood on guard. For a moment, nobody initiated any attacks. Facing their enemy in close proximity, the three of them immediately felt a wave of nausea. The Duoluzhong was apparently male, and its body was well hydrated. Just looking at its body, it was entirely like a normal human being. Not only his body, but it still retained its eyelids over its long slit eyes, its high forehead was also flat and smooth, it looked really normal without a single disgusting feature. However, the undeniable fact was that it had a mouthpart, attached to its normal clean male face. There was a black hole where his nose and mouth should have been, and a large mosquito-like mouthpart extended from the deep hole. It looked as if it was exactly designed to display such a strange contrast, so much so that Lin Sanju would rather look at Wang Sisi. "Why do all of you seem prepared?" A human voice came from the male Duoluzhong's mouthpart. There was even a revolting hint of a smile in its eyes. "I just arrived, and all of you stopped your vehicles at once. Who sent you a message? Why, does it seem like it was implying that there were other Duoluzhong? I don't like to have a rubbish conversation with non-human creatures." This thought flashed through Lin Sanju's head. Without much planning, Lin Sanju smiled, and a white light flashed in her palm a couple of times. There was suddenly a few cards in her left hand. This was a new technique she had developed after testing her ability multiple times. As she waved her left hand, she threw out 5 thin cards which immediately flew straight ahead following her intentions. They rapidly close in on the duolujang. Next, the 5 cards dispersed in midair, arranging themselves to target the duolujang's anterior. Get health insurance to double your peace of mind. Buy now. Get health insurance to double your peace of mind. Buy now. HDFC Ergo. Ads by PubFuture. That's right, Lin Sanju could control the speed and trajectory of the cards in midair. This was a formidable technique. Unfortunately, there was a great limitation. At her current state, she could only control the cards for 5 seconds, contemporary romance. Quicker than words could describe, and before the duolujang realized the situation it was facing, the 5 cards accelerated and directly headed toward the duolujang's vital points. Just when they were about to touch its skin, the 5 cards turned in sharp razor blades at the same time. As it dodged and countered, not all 5 blades struck their target, but one of the razor blades pierced deeply into the duolujang's left eyes. A sharp shriek rang out in the night sky, and the duolujang's mouthpart trembled uncontrollably in midair. Quick, this is our chance. Luther rushed forward brandishing a police baton. He landed a heavy strike. With a dreadful sound, the duolujang's chin was shattered. It was practically clear that the duolujang had to die here today. As that thought rose in his mind, Luther suddenly saw a reflective shine from the corner of his eyes. It was immediately followed by an explosive bang, which sounded like a gunshot. The reflective shine extended into a straight line and shot towards Voli's chest like a meteorite. The color drained from his face, and he desperately reached for his mobile phone. But just as he summoned it out, a mist of blood burst forth from his chest cavity, and his body and phone fell heavily to the ground at the same time. Subsequently, Voli snatched his last breath with widened eyes as his mobile phone disappeared with a white light on the spot. Everything happened too quickly. The 3 of them who were engaged in combat with the duolujang could not react fast enough. They stared at Voli's body, stunned. Using that opportunity, the duolujang dared not continue the fight. Instead, he did a flip, escaped their encirclement and turned to run. Lin Sanju was about to poise herself to chase after it. Suddenly, an alarm exploded in her mind. Before she could even respond, she dropped to the ground and rolled to a side. Another gunshot rang out. There was now a hole in the ground where she was previously standing, and white smoke rose from it. This time, she fully understood the situation. We are being sniped at. All of you, look for a place to hide. Quick. Marcy and Luther flung themselves toward the bus and hid behind it while Lin Sanju crouched behind the Citro. They were all panting. After the other party had lost sight of their target, the sound of gunshots stopped. The night fell back to a still silence. Mr. Voli is dead, Marcy whispered, sounding like it was something that was somewhat difficult to accept. It must be done by that duolujang's accomplices, right? Lin Sanju could feel her heart palpitating as if it was about to burst out from her chest. We are really unlucky. We actually met a duolujang that knows how to snipe. Luther gave her a complicated look and shook his head. It is not done by that duolujang, I saw it just now. In the building on the left, I saw spots of metallic light. The bullet that hit Voli was one of the spots of the lights. Hearing what he described, the 2 others looked at him with widened eyes. Isn't that an evolved ability? Unquestionably, evolved abilities can only be used by humans. Luther replied bitterly, that's right, it must be an evolved scum who partnered with that duolujang. Momentarily, Lin Sanju was unable to digest that information. Partnering with a duolujang? What did he stand to gain? Just as she said this, she heard a thump above her head. She instinctively looked upward only to see that duolujang which had fled just moments before. It was standing on the roof of the Citro, and its long mouthpart was dangling beside Lin Sanji's shoulder.